Hi, everyone. It's been a while since I've done a talk. It's not really my thing, but I'm making an exception to mark the anniversary of the network. So Stellar is obviously like a super important part of my story as a developer and founder. So I'm excited to be here with you guys, the Meridian audience, to share my perspective on how we got here. So Stellar has had a long journey so far. We launched over 10 years ago. It's hard to remember or imagine the crypto landscape, what it was like back then. At the time, there was basically just Bitcoin, a few forks of Bitcoin, and Ripple. There was no Ethereum or any of the current long list of various chains doing various things that we have today. And at the time, Stellar was way ahead of everything out there. It launched with a novel consensus mechanism that was much faster, much more secure. It had a flexible permission system on accounts, which maybe seems trivial, but it was a way to have other people access your accounts in different ways. You could set permissions and all this kind of stuff. There was just small ease of use things for developers, like the ledger state was stored in a database, so you didn't have to use a weird API to access it. Made it easier to work with. It had native stablecoin support before stablecoins that was even a term, and a distributed exchange. So it was by far the most innovative, scalable, and fastest chain, and the industry took years to catch up. But we recognized that while we were the most innovative, it didn't necessarily mean immediate adoption. We had a clear idea about what the component parts were beyond the basic technical stuff that we needed to make Stellar a success. And really, I think this is true of all blockchain efforts. It was a strategy surrounding all the things that needed the network to make it useful. Without these components, the network really wouldn't work. The code could be there, but it wouldn't be put to good use. And so I called it Tiger Shark. Really what it was three things. It was a nice, easy-to-use interface for people, because people actually had to use this, meaning good UX and UI. Liquidity, so you could have, you could move in and out of these different assets, because really what Stellar was is a way to move money cross-border and globally, so you need liquidity with all these things. And then on and off ramps, so you could get money on and off the network in all these different countries and places. And so all these things that we spend a lot of time getting in place and create the kind of utility we've seen in the network today with projects like Decaf, Vibrant, MoneyGram, and more. But I'm not just looking back with rose-colored glasses. We didn't get all of it right in those early days, and there were plenty of things we didn't do well. And one of the main ones is communication. To get people on board with innovation, you need to spread the word, educate people, bring them along on the journey. First, so they get comfortable with change, and also so they really understand the differences, what differentiates your innovation. What are the technical changes that make this so meaningful? And to be honest, again, we didn't do that well in the beginning. We weren't good at spreading the understanding that Stellar was technically just so far ahead of the rest of the things out there in the world. And Stellar still is and was just this amazing piece of software. In part, you need communication not just to attract people to your platform, but also with innovation, it just isn't true that if you build it, they will come. You can build it, and then if no one understands why this is a good innovation, then they won't even understand why they should care. And I think over the last 10 years, we've gotten a lot better at telling the story of why Stellar. But my takeaway from those early days is definitely that spreading the word is such an important part of the equation. But one thing that we did get right, and still is core to what we do at SDF, is the ongoing iterative process of innovation. And you see this, many projects and companies start with some interesting innovation. It works, they gain traction and grow, they become big, but then ultimately they become big and kind of calcify. They forget how or no longer have the collective will to innovate, and they ultimately are rendered irrelevant by new players, right? So you see this over and over, but it doesn't have to be the case. And kind of as a developer or someone working in the tech industry, you feel this very viscerally. You're always kind of running to stay at the edge of what is possible. You have to remain curious and interested. You can't be afraid to discard old ideas and must always be learning. One of the most important skills as a programmer I found is the ability to quickly learn new things. There will always be new things to learn, new languages, protocols, APIs, frameworks, paradigms. You must pick these up and fight back the urge to just do it the way you've always known, right? In the way that it's comfortable. But it's always slower at first, but ultimately the payoff will come. And companies and projects are this, but just at a different scale. The world changes, the organization must learn, the organization must change and innovate. It'll be painful at first, but the payoff will come. As they say, the only constant is change, which implies that the only way to survive long term is to be flexible and always be innovating. This is a core part of what SDF is. We have built a team of innovators, and although we are one of the oldest blockchains, we haven't been static. We are constantly working to remain at the forefront. As an example of this, at the beginning of Stellar, one thing we considered and decided not to pursue were Turing-complete smart contracts. And last year, you saw the introduction of Soroban when we realized we needed smart contracts. So we not only caught up with the industry, but again, created a system that is much better than what was already out there. So when I think about what innovation looks like from here, I want to call out some of the new problems we are working and thinking about. You've heard about many of these developments here at this conference. We're constantly busy improving and reimagining the network on many levels. Like, for instance, innovations for the ecosystem, like LaunchTube to make sending payments simpler, the smart wallet for simpler dealing with smart contracts, and composable data store that'll make it much easier for developers to get the info they need from the network. Innovating on capabilities of the network as a whole, continuing to stay on the forefront of what is possible by reducing latency, increasing TPS with a better overlay and parallel Soroban. Innovations related to future demands of the network with things like state archival to address the eventual problem of state bloat. And more radical innovations, like kind of in the background, like SpeedX, which is a new and much faster way to do the DEX. It can handle like 250,000 trades per second, so it would be a huge improvement. And all these things we're kind of working on. So we're clearly busy at the SCF, but the most exciting thing about this time in the network's history, for me, is now that there is Soroban, it means that SDF is no longer the blocker for innovation on the network, and this is super important. This is like the main takeaway here. Smart contracts have been so successful on other chains because they allow many other people to innovate, not just the main developers of the chain. And this is so powerful because technology in general is driven by innovation, as you all know. Now all of you can create and build and try new things as well, pushing the Stellar network to do things and use in ways that we never anticipated. And some of these things will work and some won't, but the ability to try so many things in parallel is super powerful and a great unlock for us. And it should greatly increase the pace of innovation that is possible and lead to a much more robust and useful network for everyone. Stellar's continued success and increasing adoption is in your hands now more than ever, which I think is actually really good. So, SDF has built an amazing collection of technology. There's more hope and promise in this network than ever before. And as an interoperable network, it just becomes more and more valuable as participation grows. So I guess my ask for all of you out there is to continue building and innovating, continue pushing forward and spreading the word and getting wider and wider adoption. Let's see what the system can do. And I think, Frank, do you have some questions for me? That's it? Yeah. Yeah.
Easiest job in the world because all the questions are coming through right here on this iPad. I was going to start, by the way, thank you so much for the presentation, by asking about what you think the zeitgeist of crypto is at this moment and how that's shifted over the course of your career, right? From
Sure.
Mt. Gox to Ripple to Stellar. But a question came in that I like more. So maybe we can get to the zeitgeist question, but let's start with Anonymous. I think it's him. If you could go back and started with smart contracts from the beginning, would you?
Yeah, I think we would. Yeah, I think it was a mistake not to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you think about that, what was sort of the reasoning for maybe not starting there?
Well, it's a hard thing to get right. There's, a Turing-complete system always has like a large surface area that potential for attacks and things like that. So like I think we were focused on trying to make this like simple payment system for cross-border payments, enable cross-border payments. So our initial thought was we can kind of bake in the primitives that we think people will need to use, things like the distributed exchange, things like stable coins, and make that super easy. So you don't need an ERC20 on Stellar. It's built into the network. But it's hard to anticipate everything that people will want and all the different little edge cases, and allowing people the flexibility to build those things, I think, is like super powerful, and it gives developers like things like that. There's more for developers to sink their teeth into, and so all those things I think were kind of would have been better to done from the get-go.
You also get to learn from the impediments and the strengths of folks who have come before you.
Yeah.
What lessons do you think you've sort of picked up on from, we won't name the other chains, but the other chains?
Sure. I mean, a lot of them are kind of like in the weeds technically. It's just, you kind of see how things have I mean, software is very iterative in general. Like, it gets built, and there's, the successive, either with the same piece of software or like alternatives can see kind of the weaknesses and where things went wrong, and you can like start fresh and like build it from scratch. And that's just the way software is built, right? And so, in some ways, we're lucky that we're built Sorbonne so late, because we could like see kind of where things have not worked out so well in other chains and correct those deficiencies and what I think make a much better smart contract platform.
So we'll go back to my zeitgeist question. Obviously, over the past decade, when people think about crypto and its value proposition, it's changed, or the innovation's changed as well. It wasn't too long ago that, I was aping into NFTs and not paying my rent.
Right.
No, I did. When you think about what the zeitgeist is, people think stablecoins right now. It's a huge one. But what is it in your opinion?
So yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, there's just so many more people in crypto, and it's not a fringe thing anymore. Like, it's everybody knows what it is. Everyone has touched it in some way at this point. So it feels kind of like the world is like bifurcating a little bit. There's like, there's still projects like Stellar that are like very focused on real world use cases, and then there's kind of this whole like meme other side where, people are just using it almost for entertainment or just gambling and things like that. And it's not necessarily bad, but it's definitely different than the original like root of how crypto kind of came about. It's So it's a wider world essentially. Like, there's just more out there. So.
Yeah, I feel like stablecoins have helped unlock that wider world.
Yeah, well, I mean, stablecoins I think would fall in the bucket of like this is our thesis from the beginning. Like, if you want to have a new financial network, you still need to interoperate with the old one, right? You can't just completely blow it up and be like, everybody, hey, now everyone switch to this new currency. Like, you need a currency exchange, and so that's what stablecoins essentially provide. And so I think the more of that there is in Stellar and all these other networks, it makes them way more useful. So. Yeah.
And thinking about mass adoption, though, I think UX is probably one roadblock, perhaps. One question, did you think it would take this long to get to this point of adoption? And then people use the word mass adoption. It's almost trite at this point.
Right.
But how far are we from that?
Yeah, no, I definitely was a little naive. I thought it would be quicker. I mean, it turns out there's a lot of regulatory headwinds on this stuff, and so and also just people are very slow to change their habits around money, like rightfully so. Like, it's it's very meaningful to people. So it's taken longer than we anticipated, but it is moving, and it is working, and it's growing, right? So it's just at some point I think we'll hit an inflection point and it'll really take off. But yeah.
Another anonymous person asked, why are you guys so afraid to share your name? Do you think crypto's reputation is better from when you started?
Yes and no. I think, yeah. I mean, I think it's kind of bifurcated into these two worlds. I mean, there's definitely like a part of crypto that is like has a much better reputation. Like, banks take it. There's like a lot of like reputable firms that use it now, and then there's this whole other world that's still kind of like, more underground, like scammy and stuff like that. And so, so it's different. I think, in the beginning, I think people were just like more uncertain of the direction it would take and like how the rest of the world would react to it. So it was a lot of like fear about how governments and financial institutions would react to this system, and for the most part they've been like fairly receptive to it. So yeah.
You described yourself maybe a decade ago as naive, potentially. Let's think about a decade into the future. What does Stellar look like in 2035?
Yeah.
Or, well, 20. This person said 35, but technically
that's fine. 11
34.
years. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, obviously it's very hard to predict. I mean, the hope is that it just becomes more widely adopted, and it becomes very useful for what it's intended to do, which is move money cross border and like facilitate payments all around the world. So I mean, that's still what we're driving towards, and I think it can get there. So.
Well, we shall see.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks.
Good chatting.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.